Welcome, members and visitors. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Elisa O'Brien, and I am pleased and privileged to serve this community on the Board of Trustees. Every Sunday morning, we gather here to commit an act of rebellion. Our rebellion is that by our presence here, we say, "You are important." We rebel against the myth that each person is an island. We rebel against the wisdom that commitment to community is dead. We show up, greet one another, and take part in service so that our minds and our hearts may be renewed. We take part so that our spirit and service is strong and generous. If you are visiting us for the first time, we hope you will feel our sincere welcome, our appreciation for your presence, and our invitation to join in this rebellion we call community. If you're joining us virtually, we encourage you to tune in 5 to 10 minutes early in order to catch the rolling announcements. This is a good way to stay informed about things that are important to our church community.
Well, good morning. I am the Reverend Sherman Logan, and I have the honor and privilege to serve this great congregation as its acting senior minister. And it's so good to be with you all this morning on this beautiful sunshiny day. It is so good to be together in this sacred place with all of you, wherever you are at this moment. So as we enter this time of worship, we come today during these anxious times. Some of us are seeking many things. Some of us are seeking peace. Some of us are seeking healing. Some are seeking answers. And others are looking for the right questions. So in this hour of worship, touch our hearts, fill our hearts, open our hearts to the love which passes all understanding. and may we find what we are seeking. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. My name is Leanne Luskin. I have the deep honor of serving this congregation as a youth coordinator. Our chalice lighting this morning comes from Reverend Molly Brewer. I offer you a chalice lighting for when things aren't okay. My beloved people, I cannot pretend, and so I will not tell you that everything is okay right now, that there is no reason to be angry, that you must be optimistic or at peace. I cannot pretend these things, and so I won't tell them to you. But now our chalice is lit, and so all I ask in this moment is that we remember the words of Rebecca Parker. There is a love. There is a love holding us. There's a love holding all. By the light of our chalice, let us rest in this love. For our first reading this morning, I offer you an excerpt from Dreaming Accountability by activist Mia Mingus. What if accountability wasn't scary? Take a breath and let that sink in for a minute. What if accountability wasn't scary? It will never be easy or comfortable, but what if it wasn't scary? What if our own accountability wasn't something we ran from, but something we ran towards and desired, appreciated, held as sacred? What if we cherished opportunities to take accountability as precious opportunities to practice liberation, to practice love, to practice the kinds of people, elders to be, and souls we want to be, to practice that which can only practice in real time? After all, we can only practice courage when we are afraid. We can only practice taking accountability when we have wronged or harmed or hurt. Practice yields the sharpest analysis. Accountability is not a destination. It is a skill we can build and practice. It is an art, a craft, an alchemy we can learn how to wield, just as we have learned how to wield hurt and shame and fear. If accountability is a skill we value, then we must make room and make commitments to practice it ourselves each day, each week, each year. We can start small and build up our skills from there. We can start with our everyday relationships and those closest to us, our families, our friends, our partners, our coworkers, our congregation, the earth.
I invite you now, as you are comfortable, to sit straight in your seat, both feet plant firmly on the ground. Close your eyes if you're comfortable, and let us spend a few moments in quiet reflection and meditation. Spirit of life and love, God of our own understanding, we come to you this morning with grateful hearts as we acknowledge your most intimate presence by many different means. For each of us, we speak the deepest prayers of our hearts in different ways, knowing that what it means for them to be answered will look and feel different for each of us. So whatever method we choose to acknowledge what is divine in us this morning, we come to say thank you. We know that life is a gift, and we give thanks for our lives. We give thanks for this place, for this community, for Reverend Jean. We thank you for truly understanding each of us, and you can meet us at the place of our deepest needs. We left the needs of our hearts to you and took the time to breathe, reflecting on how each life-giving breath is a powerful sign of your life-giving purpose inherent in each one of us and all people. So we thank you for this purpose, and for providing everything needed to see it to fulfillment. So in this moment of prayer, we pray for those things in which we are struggling with, for our conflicts we feel deep inside of ourselves and between us and those we love, for this troubled world we live. So we ask that you shine your light through our times of darkness, grief, and sadness, and bring us hope and encouragement as we face the many challenges of life. Open our hearts for the journey, our eyes for the light, our spirit for peace. And the grace that we experience in this sacred space this morning in the beloved community be multiplied to overflowing. Bless each one of us here today, those who are with us virtually, and refresh our spirits and transform our whole being until we reflect your love and compassion through and through. May this be so. Amen. Ashe.
Good morning. I'm Chris Peterson. My wife Becky and I are new members of the church. Previously, we were longtime members of the UU congregation of Fairfax. I am pleased to advise that this month's Share the Plate partner is Home Again of Richmond. Home Again is a charitable organization formed in 1980. The agency operates 3 homeless programs in downtown Richmond, one for single men, one for families, and one specifically for veterans. I volunteer one morning a week at the Home Again's men's shelter, which serves up to 28 men at a time. Home Again provides safe, temporary shelter with nutritional sustenance. Once housed within the shelter, counselors deliver services to residents to build their employment confidence and health stability. Social program and employment opportunities are explored and pursued. Finally, Home Again assists residents in finding affordable independent living from which to restart their lives. From admission to independent housing usually takes 60 days. I first learned of Home Again listening in on RISC community Zoom call last spring, part of which highlighted Home Again. My 4 hours a week at the men's shelter have been gratifying and eye-opening. These men are everyday people caught in the ramifications of personal catastrophe involving their health, their family, their employment, or just plain wrong choices. Not every resident succeeds the first time. This is a challenging clientele. Yet, Home Again's overall success rate is nearly 60%, almost double the rate prescribed in government oversight guidelines. So this month, I urge your participation and Share the Plate. I also encourage you to check out Home Again and their volunteer opportunities at www.homeagainrichmond.org. Thanks very much.
Our second reading this morning is from the Reverend Teresa Inez Soto, Spilling the Light. Some people are used to keeping rules. Don't cross the street when the light is red, only sensible. It turns out that keeping rules isn't the same as keeping covenant, which asks us, instead of keeping a bright line to keep our promises, to what have we promised ourselves? To this moment and this time and place, to this community, and even tenderly interconnecting this planet. We promise ourselves to the idea that we are each all human beings. We promise that as something moving between us that we cannot tame, we cannot measure. This chalice is a reminder that what flame we keep inside of us cannot light away. The light must spill to shine. The thing you must be is yourself, unadulterated, shedding the willingness to journey alone, as though you are made of something hard and unforgivable. You are human. You belong right here, right now, and together we will chase away the sickness, the secrets, and leave only the open possibilities that the future and a space for growth. I don't know about you all, but I had a few guilty pleasures during the pandemic, and one of them that I acquired, and don't laugh at me, but I was watching the ABC talk show, The View. You know, it became must-see TV for my wife and I as we watched the recorded episodes before we retired for the evening. A few weeks ago, we watched an episode where there was a discussion about a Tennessee school board decision to remove Mars, a graphic novel about the Holocaust, from an 8th grade language arts curriculum. Now, the View lead moderator, Whoopi Goldberg, said that she didn't believe that the events of the Holocaust took place because of race, but instead it happened because of man and humanity to man. She'll go on to say that because the two groups involved in the Holocaust were both white, it could not have been about race. And after Whoopi made that statement, I turned to my wife and said, "Oh, you know what? She stepped in it now." And as you know, Whoopi's comment sparked a lot of widespread backlash, and she issued her online apology on the next day. And on the next program, she was with the Anti-Defamation League CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt, who explained how Whoopi's comments were inaccurate and harmful. And so the network suspended Whoopi for 2 weeks over what the head of ABC News called wrong and hurtful comments about Jews and the Holocaust. Now, Greenblatt, on another interview with CNN, warned about unfairly condemning Whoopi over the comments. He said that sometimes we have people in public places who can say the clumsy things about faith and gender, but I don't believe in a cancel culture. So he accepted Whoopi's apology and said that he and the ADL were committed to working with her and others and wanted to see this as a teachable moment. Friends, we live in a time of cancel culture, a phenomenon where anyone can make a mistake or a series of mistakes and reach a point where we no longer desire to support them or acknowledge their existence. Folks are erased because of conflicting ideologies, opinions, unseemly said things they did and said when they were teenagers. So let me tell y'all something. If there were social media around when I was a teenager, especially when we were cruising along Bird Park right across the street from this church, I wouldn't be standing here this morning as your acting senior minister. So I'm glad we didn't have social media in those days. And cancel culture is usually reserved for celebrity and politicians, but we also can cancel other people in our lives. Now, take a moment to think about this. How many people have we counseled because of disagreements, different opinions about race, gender, sexuality, and different religion and political views? And you know, we counsel people in our lives every day. Now, I do disagree with Whoopi and her Whoopi comments about the Holocaust not being about race, and it was historically inaccurate and extremely hurtful to our Jewish siblings. But we need to ask ourselves, did her comments really warranted a 2-week suspension? And ask this question, to counsel or not counsel? When is the right time to counsel someone? Is there a time? How can a person do something counsel-worthy before they are actually counseled? The Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson asked the question in a December 2020 New York Times opinion piece, where is the forgiveness and grace in cancel culture? Well, one thing, cancel culture is typically always external and never internal. And we are so often to point out how those around us should be counseled, but very rarely point the fingers back at ourselves when we make similar mistakes. And social media has also played a large part in the proliferation of the cancel culture. Now, I'm not very savvy on social media. The only site I'm really on is Facebook. But frequently, I see that when folks have made opinions that might be unpopular, their opinions are often eviscerated by mob mentality and groupthink. And if you dare to disagree with a post or comment, you were attacked by the Facebook vigilantes and kicked to the curb. Now, another thing I believe about cancel culture, and this is just my opinion, that it doesn't actually care about the facts just so long as those facts go along with the prevailing emotional states of the group. But cancel culture is more nuanced than that. It's complex. It lives in a binary world in which ones and zeros can only see black and white with no gray in sight. Now think about what would happen if Governor Ralph Northam had been canceled, when the picture of him in blackface makeup from his med school days surfaced. There are many folks in the community who called for his resignation, and some were trying to force him out of office. Some was trying to cancel him. But he did not resign. He managed to keep his office. But he was held accountable by his constituents. He accepted responsibility for his actions. He attended for his past indiscretions, and he focused on racial justice issues, paid attention to maternal mortality, equity in transportation, funding for historical black colleges. He taught schools how to teach history of race and got the R.E. Lee statue removed, restored voting rights for thousands of felons. So if he was canceled, what would have happened? If he was forced out of office, would those things would have happened? Maybe not. Now, before you start emailing me, texting me, or counseling me, let me say this. I do believe that we should be held accountable for our actions and hurtful comments or opinions that do not value the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And I don't see acknowledging harm or holding wrongdoers accountable is seen as cancellation. You know, cancel culture originated as a way for disempowered people to address the harm, to take down abuses, and to hold those in power accountable for their wrongdoing. But has it gone too far? Now, some might think it hasn't gone far enough when we're talking about the imbalance of power and patterns of harm. And some think it has gone far enough. However, Adrienne Marie Brown reminds us that counseling is punishment, and punishment doesn't stop the cycle of harm, not long term. So is there a space in cancel culture for folks who make amends for their past actions? Bell Hooks asks, how do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing, yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity, enough in their capacity to be transformed? Now, we should acknowledge when wrongdoing is done in the community, and we should hold wrongdoers accountable. But we also should be willing to invite them back into the community, especially if they make efforts to amend their ways. Now, there are some actions that calls for serious accountability. For instance, the Me Too movement brought to light countless of unaddressed sexual assaults. And during those times, those offenders perhaps should not be welcomed back into the community. And there are times when wrongs are so egregious, harmful, destructive, that actions of the offenders has so severely breached the covenant with the community, it may not be no turning back. So we may not want to welcome the folks back in the community. And yes, we should seek accountability, but without the shame and blame. Loretta Ross, a professor at Smith College, tells us that there are times for calling in, which is meant not to shame, but to create a connection that allows for great growth and transformation. So yes, we all should be held accountable when our actions cause harm and hurt others. But should there be a space for forgiveness? And you would think in a faith community there should be an overflow of forgiveness. So I harken back to the question, where is grace and forgiveness in the age of cancel culture? Some of us have done horrible things in the past, and we sought forgiveness. Our words and action, whether intended or not, at times it cause great pain and harm. And forgiveness doesn't take those things away. And I can remember my youngest daughter will always tell me, Daddy, saying sorry doesn't take away the pain. But we do need to make change, and changes make things right. And that change occurred when the forgiveness began. Authentic forgiveness stems from a deep faith that we are enough, that love is abundant, and that even though we have been wrong, we don't have to spend our emotional energy trying to repay the debt. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean we ignore the hurt, nor it doesn't mean that we pretend that it didn't happen. And we need to recognize the victims of injustice and work towards a more fair and equitable society. Forgiveness doesn't suspend judgment, and it doesn't mean not holding folks accountable, ignoring injustice, wrongdoing, or forgetting the past. But forgiveness changes us, and it protects us against resentment. Forgiveness accompanies repentance, reconciliation, and sincere forgiveness begins when we are willing to reconcile with one another. Now, I know we cannot wait years before apologies are extended and forgiveness is given and accepted, and if we choose to counsel someone instead of forgiving them, it does not remedy the problem, it only hurts. And if forgiveness spawns trust, then let's all take the position that forgiveness is something that is a long path, even though we feel we might have been wrong. So perhaps we should offer forgiveness instead of cancellation. So again, I ask, where is there grace and forgiveness in the council culture? So let's talk about grace. Grace is something that we all need, and I believe none of us will survive the actual punishment of our action if they are always given to us every time we deserve them. Think about if we were counseled and erased for every mistake and judgment we made. The derogatory, discriminating jokes or social media posts that you might have made about folks in the past that you wouldn't dare think about doing it today. Or think about being counseled for your political ideology that you had at one time, even as your views has evolved and transformed. What if we were counseled for mistakes and our indiscretion of our youth? Suppose we were counseled for a damaging social media post we made in the past. Friends, the real deal is that we live in a world where we have folks hate giving out grace who are desperately asking for it from themselves. And friends, some folks thrive in the council culture because they're too insecure about fessing up that they need a small grace that they often refuse to extend to others. Council culture thrives in the heart of those who refuse to see their issues and avoid to detect their flaws, and who relish an opportunity to take hold of that big old spotlight on themselves and turn it on someone else. But let me be clear this morning. Grace does not avoid wrongdoing. Grace calls out what needs to be called out. Grace doesn't give favor without acknowledging punishment that is deserved. And grace does not negate justice. So, friends, I don't think council culture is going away anytime soon, and we must acknowledge the pain we cause others with our words and action, and we must hold others accountable and ourselves for those actions. But we still can find grace and forgiveness. There is grace and forgiveness in this heavy culture, council culture. And we know of some people who jump at opportunity whenever they have it to counsel folks. And we see if they do something they don't like, they want to erase them out of existence. But you know, people were not created to fulfill our desires, nor they were made for us to bank our hopes. We would hurt people, and people would hurt us. Folks would let us down. Members of our family would let us down. Members of this faith community would let us down. Our cherished friends may disappoint us. And if our response is always cancellation, then we'll never indeed be able to enjoy each other. So, you know, we need grace. Our family members need grace. Our friends need grace. And even members here at First UU need grace. And friends, I believe in the beloved community, we should hold people accountable for the harm that we do to each other. We should hold each other accountable for our transgressions. But who are we to judge? Who are we to be the judge and the jurors? who give us the right to counsel folks. Yes, we make mistakes and hurt each other, say horrible things, and do things to each other. But we can still call out folks in the spirit of accountability and call them back in the spirit of love. So in this beloved community, there is a place for grace and forgiveness, and we all need grace and forgiveness. And I hope that the day, when that day comes that I need grace and forgiveness, instead of cancellation, you will give me grace and forgiveness. May this be so. Amen.
The words for our Chalice Extinguishing today come from writer and activist and facilitator Adrienne Marie Brown from her book, We Will Not Cancel Us. We will not cancel us. We hurt people. Of course we did. We are human. We are traumatized or socialized away from interdependence. We learned to hide everything real, everything messy, weak, or complex. We all have work to do. Our work is in the light. We have no perfect moral ground to stand on, shaped as we are by this toxic, complex time. We may not have the time or emotional capacity to walk each path together. We are all flailing in the unknown at the moment, terrified, stretched beyond ourselves, ashamed, realizing the future is in our hands. We must all do our work, be accountable, go heal, simultaneously, continuously. It's never too late. Each of us is precious. We, together, must break every cycle that makes us forget this.
I wanted to thank marvelous singers, Dave, Jamie, Barre, Paul in the sound booth, Lisa, Leanne, and you all for coming out this morning. And for those you are watching us virtually, thank you. We know, friends, we've had a hard couple of weeks, but I just ask that you be gentle with yourself and each other, and we'll get through this. We will. Because we need each other to survive. So now go forth knowing that we need each other to survive. Be of good courage. Prove all things. Hold fast to what is good. Go forth knowing that you are blessed and that you are to be blessing to each and every one you meet. May this be so. Amen. Ashe.